Welcome back to Marion's World, everyone, and today's video is all about turning this quite boring blue thrifted jacket into something beautiful with some creative Sashiko embroidery. These Sashiko patterns are called hitomezashi patterns, and I'm a real beginner at doing them, and so in this video I'll be showing you how I get along. This is the jacket as it is now. It's a good fit, it's a nice shape. It's just a bit boring. And so what I thought I'd do is practice my Sashiko stitching. I've got the jacket actually lying with its shoulders over the end of my ironing board, and it means I can really flatten out the back area. And I've started to mark out because I'd like this to be covered with Sashiko. And the first pattern I'm going to try out is a hitomezashi pattern, which is based on a grid. And I do have this fine white marking pen by Clover. Now I've never used it before. I was just going to use a bit of soap because soap makes a successful line on dark fabric, but it's a bit thick. And the only thing I've already realised with this is when you put it on, it's actually invisible, but it dries white. But I'm going to mark out straight down the line of the fabric. I'm going to mark out 1 centimetre marks. So I'm just going to line up, and if I put my mark on, I'm going to go down here and you'll see there's nothing there, and then it'll appear. There's nothing there, and then all of a sudden, and there they are. You can see my marks. So I'm actually going to mark all the way down here to the bottom on my 1 centimetre lines, and then I'm going to mark 1 centimetre off along the bottom, and I'm going to mark this out as a grid entirely. I've marked out my grid, and I actually realised that 1 centimetre squares were too big, and I've gone and made them 1/2 centimetre. Now I have found it quite difficult to mark, and I think it's because this is so transparent when you put it down. The temptation is to go over the line twice. Well, all that's made is it's just made a mess here where the line's gone twice. So once you can just get into the habit of just doing the line once, even though you can't see it, it does dry and makes the white mark. So that's one lesson, because although I've done some this type of stitching, this is the first time I'll have tried to do some proper Sashiko stitching, which is why I want to practice on this thrifted jacket before I go ahead with my hand 10 jacket that I'm going to make. So I've got my Sashiko needle, and these are just tulip Sashiko needles, and it's called Assorted Long, and I'm actually using the longest. And I do have Sashiko thread that I actually bought from the Japan shop when I was at Sewing for Pleasure. And I've made the grid because I am going to be doing a stitch called hitomezashi, which is rice stitch. And so the first thing is to make the stitches that are going to be over one little square and under the next. And I'm just going to start somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to go under one square, over the next one, and I've got my palm thimble on. I feel as if I might need to make myself a larger one, and I'm going to try my best to be in good practice. So I know I'm going to be slow because I've not done it this way before, but this is how you learn. You just have to practice and go forward. So I'll get a few stitches on my needle, push it through and see what happens. So at the moment I'm just going to leave the little tail there and decide on what to do with that afterwards. So instead of holding my needle like I normally would, like that, and go in and out, which is what I'm tempted to do because that's how I'm used to sewing, that isn't the correct way. and then I would use my thimble to push through. I'm actually going to try and do it the proper way, and I'm going to nestle that right into the thimble, and I'm going to go from there. And definitely the half centimetre squares are definitely the correct size. And if this doesn't look overly even, I think I'm okay with that. It's a practice. I'm happy to just see how it all comes out, and hopefully I'll see the improvement as I stitch, as I get more even. And I'll keep pulling my jacket to make sure that they're even. See, I've gone straight back to my usual method of holding. I'm going to make sure I do holding in the end. There'll be people who are experienced Sashiko stitchers that'll just be cringing at my clumsy attempts, but we all have to start somewhere, and for me this is something I haven't done before, but I've been wanting to do for absolutely ages. So I'm off and running, that's the thing. Well, I'm off and stitching. And what I'm going to do at the end of that row, I'm going to make sure it's nice and flat. I'm going to take my needle down to the back. I'm going to come up on the next row, and I'm coming up in the gap, and I'm actually going to leave a little loop there so that I'm not going to pull anything. I'm going to leave that little loop hanging, and so I'll have to turn everything round. So I've got everything turned round, I'm back ready, and I'm going to put my stitches on this row over the gaps of the row before. So you can definitely see why you need to have the grid, unless there's super experienced people out there that do it without the grid. My goodness. My soap marking method would definitely have not done a fine enough line. I'm wondering what the weather is like where you all are, because honestly it's been raining here for the past 2 days solid. There's hardly been a break in the weather. I've got every light on here so that I can film this. Had to turn my heating. I resisted putting the fire on last night. I thought I can't be putting the fire on in July. Plus it was raining so hard I didn't want to go out to get the coal. I'm pleased I'm off and doing this now. I'm only doing this because I was so wanting to make those skirts or dresses with the clothes that I got at the boot sale, and I thought, no, you've got other thrifting clothes things to do before. And of course my brain went straight to the hand 10 jacket. I thought, I'm not really up to doing that yet, that's quite a big project. And then I immediately remembered I had this jacket waiting as the practice. And obviously I think my marking has not been the most accurate, because this fabric's quite rough, and then that marker pen quite surprised me. I did know exactly what I wanted to do on here, so with any luck it'll work out. I'll leave a loop, turn it all round and come back down again. So I've been watching 2 websites to get information for doing this for today. I'll link them in the description. One is the Green Wrapper. I found her site very, very interesting and very helpful indeed. And the other one is Sashiko Stories, which I've been on there for quite a while, since I wanted to do my coat. I know I'm being slow. When I see them online, they're going like that. Obviously not with the, I was giving you the sound effects there. Well, that's a good start, I think. You can see I've sort of parcelled it out because I want to try different patterns, like a little sampler of stitches really. Definitely on this part anyway. So I'm going to get all of those horizontal lines in. You can see how I'm getting on now. I'm crossing the stitches, and you definitely could not do this without having the little grid. I think it would be nigh on impossible. So to do all the crossings, I'm actually picking up the line of my grid in there and crossing over, and it is working out fine, but I can see that the accuracy of the grid is definitely conducive to having good stitches, and my grid wasn't overly accurate. It's fine in some places and not in others, but that is definitely why I'm having to practice, because I want my hand 10 jacket to be lovely when I've done it. And if I can practice all the bits and pieces and get my technique refined, so that by the time I'm doing it I've got it right, then it'll be all to the better. And I'm not going to worry about any perceived mistakes in this bit, even though I know there are. And some of my crosses are barely crossed. Look here, they're barely crossed. But in the grand scheme of things, it is going to be fine. And it's just really trying to say that everybody learns all the time, and this is something for me to learn. Although I've done some what I would have said was Sashiko before, it's never been properly done like this, or it hasn't been this type of thing. It's just more been the running stitch, and I didn't use a proper thimble or anything, but I'm really trying to do the proper technique now, and so that's why I needed the practice. And I'm tempted now to leave the little crosses, because I think when this gets all crossed up there, it's going to look so lovely. But I did want to do the rice stitch, so see, I've gone back to, that's because I'm such a stitcher of the way I've been doing it for 60 years. It's hard to learn a new technique, but I can do it. I can learn a new technique, and I'm determined to do it the proper way. So no laughing out there, or you experienced Sashiko stitches to see my weird way of doing it. Because I'm a learner. I'm a beginner. And we all have to begin somewhere. Thing is, I've been watching videos on Sashiko for absolutely ages, just getting the inspiration all the time and not having the chance to start anything. Watching the videos and actually doing something in practice can be two entirely different things. And it doesn't matter that I'm slow. You get speed with practice. Plus, not everything's about speed. It's about enjoying it and having a nice outcome at the end. Oh, it's lovely. I've never done quite as much in one piece before. I've done little tiny bits where I didn't use the proper technique. But this is different. This is doing the proper thing. I'm almost finished this piece, and I'm over the moon with how it's looking. I decided to do alternate diagonals to leave the little space in the middle, and I think it's looking really nice. And even just with this amount of practice, I feel I'm getting a better holding technique, and so it just shows that a bit of practice goes a long way. So I'm going to finish this piece off by putting these diagonals in, and it is just picking up the cross as you go along the line. So I'm picking up the cross and making a stitch in the middle. I haven't got very long rows at the moment. And when I've finished this little piece, I'll be then on to doing the next bit. Now I want this to be like a sampler. I'll just put my needle there and get ready for the next row up. So I'm missing one row and doing it on the next row. And so I'm going to be putting some pieces of this. These, I'll just pull back a bit. These fabrics were sent by Naomi for me when she was in Japan a month or so ago, and they're absolutely gorgeous. They're from a place called Nomura Tailor House, and I have found them online. However, I'm not sure whether the stuff still comes from Japan or whether they have somewhere in Britain that they send out, or other countries, but it's worth looking them up because the fabric's really, really lovely. And I've got this lovely cat fabric, which to me definitely looks Japanese. I just don't feel I've seen any fabric like that here. So I think I'm going to put some of that on, but I also really, really love this. So this is already looking patchworky. So I think a little piece of that can go in as well. So when I finish this piece, I'm going to work out where they go, and I'm going to do a different hitomezashi pattern, because I'm really enjoying doing these little grid patterns. So I'm going to start off picking up the little crosses, and when I get enough on my needle, like that, I can settle my needle into the thimble and get a better sort of a grip on things. It is all just practice. Do it like that, I get a hold, and there I go. And it's the fabric moves and the needle moves. Well, that's how I'm sort of feeling as if I'm doing it. And then stretch my fabric out until I've made that. Oh, it's so pretty. This is as far as I've got on. I've actually sewn down a bit of the beautiful Japanese fabric, which I think is going to look lovely. And I did draw out another exact grid, and I've pulled it down onto this so it sort of merges them together. I just haven't been used to the fact that it doesn't show when you first put it down, but when it does show, it's a really lovely fine line. And what is amazing me, and what I think I'm getting addicted to, is the fact that this hitomezashi pattern, or these hitomezashi patterns, they're so simple and yet so complicated all at the same time. So this one here was each row of running stitch was offset by 1 square. On this one, it's still offset by 1 square, but I've got 2 rows on each line. So I've done, there's a row there, so that row and that row are matching, and then you alternate, and then you do another 2 rows matching, and then you alternate back and do another 2 rows matching. And just the fact of changing that one thing means that when you come back along with your similar 2 rows matching, 2 rows offset, instead of getting that, you get this, which is just amazing to me. I just think it's totally, yeah, I'm just amazed. And so what I've done is I've tried to show it so you can see the progression. So you can just see the grid I've got here, and I've got my verticals going up in pairs of stitches. And then here I've got the horizontals going across in pairs, and so you get the crosses and the little squares. and then my first diagonals are going down, and then my second diagonals are coming down. So it's exactly the same as this one. Offset stitches that way, offset stitches that way, and then the diagonals. But look at the difference of the pattern. It's truly amazing me. And so my jacket, which was going to be something different, is now going to be just a sampler of the hitomezashi patterns, I think, because I think I'm obsessed with them already. And now that I realise I can make my grid, that's okay. And that's one of the one of the things I would stress, is that the accuracy in marking the grid is what you need for these patterns. So I'm still stitching. I've been stitching for hours because I couldn't stop, but I wanted it to be able to show you the progression of one to the other, to the other, to the other. And so I'm now going to finish this piece off. I thought I'd have a little break from doing the hitomezashi and turn my attention to the sleeves. And I really want to add a frill. I have this, which is a thrifted blouse, and so I think I need the full width of this fabric for the sleeve to just gather it up and put a little frill in there. But before I put it on, I'm just going to embroider the bottom. So I have put a piece of this lovely pearl cotton. It's just a variegated pearl cotton that I got at I think I got it at the Welsh Wool Show just recently, just this spring. But I've got it in there, and I'm actually using my Sashiko needle to do it. And I am not even going to hem this. I'm going to start, and I am just going to blanket stitch right the way along with quite a big blanket stitch. So obviously I'm working right to left because I'm left-handed, but I'm just making stitches that are about 1/4 of an inch in width and about 1/4 of an inch in depth, and I'm making sure that the loop passes behind the needle every time, and I'm not pulling too tight. And I think this will add quite a nice little bit of colour going along, and then when I gather it up and apply it to the sleeve edge, it'll all be done. I won't have to do anything else. I think it's just easier for me to embroider it before I actually even cut it off the blouse. And I've got one more pattern to show you after I've done this sleeve, because I've just really gone down the rabbit hole of looking at all these grid patterns, and I haven't done those before. They're quite new to me. That 1/2 centimetre grid is just totally amazing what you can do with the same grid every time. I'm going to continue doing this edge with the blanket stitch, and then I'll be cutting it out, cutting it off and gathering it into the underneath of here. So I'm going to cut this out right the way along. I'm just following the pattern now, so I don't even need to measure it. And then I'll be gathering this up and just hand sewing it onto the inside of the sleeve. As you can see, I've finished the cuffs. Well, I've done that one anyway. I haven't done the Sashiko on there yet. I thought I'd try and do the lovely crosses because I really like them, even though it's one of the simplest ones. And you can see I did the grid just in the same way. And the only thing I need to alter on here, I'm not very happy with this hard transition here. I don't like that geometricness there. So I'm going to add some stitches into here to soften it and maybe extend it up the sleeve a bit. But all in all, I think that's going to work really well. So the last pattern that I want to show you was something else that I found. I saw a video on Instagram of someone doing it, and I will definitely link it because I just thought it was amazing. And anybody who's watched any of my stuff will always hear me say how I love a whipped stitch or a threaded stitch, and so this appealed to me the minute I saw it. So it's been the exact same 1/2 centimetre grid. In fact, you can see it's still there. It's just that I've ironed this on a steam setting to get the grid off, to give myself a chance to see what was happening. But where I haven't done the iron, you can still see the grids there. And I definitely realised that I need to get better at marking the grid out. But what I've done is I've taken that pearl cotton from the sleeves and I've used it to do pairs of stitches. And the way that they are put in is that there's a pair of stitches and then 3 squares free. And then another pair of stitches and 3 squares missing and another. So I'm going down a stitch, miss 3, a stitch, miss 3, a stitch, miss 3, right the way down and then back up on the next one so they're paired. And then a miss 3 and then again. And then when I've come back the other way, they're exactly the same. You're going along with a stitch, miss 3 squares and a stitch, and then back to make a pair of stitches. And so I've got a grid here now, and the whole point is going to be that I've got white in my needle because I don't want a lot of colours on here. I really like it when I see the upcycle jackets, all the frills and the doilies and things. It looks so pretty, but for me I don't feel it's practical for me to wear, and so I'm trying to keep the colour palette just like very tight, and I don't want lots of fuss on it because I think the fuss of the Sashiko patterns are enough. And so all I thought was if I put the pearl cotton down as the grid, it would match in with the sleeves, and then I'm getting a cohesive design. So here I go with what's supposed to happen. So I've come up here and I have to go into this, so it's the two stitches there, and I'm not going through the fabric at all now. I'm using the eye of the needle. Actually, I could change to a darning needle actually, and I'm gonna try and keep my fabric as flat as I can. And then I'm going to hop down to the next pair and I'll go through those 2. And so I have to go through both of them. No, and then through these 2. So I'm going through the outer stitch of each little pair. If you think of that as 2 pairs, I've gone through the outer stitch in each one. And I'm going to work up and down. And this is another hitomezashi pattern, which I just think are totally amazing. Keeping myself really nice and flat. I'll go down to there and I'm going to come back along that row and I'm going to cross the stitches. I need to come over to there and then up to these 2. If this works, it's going to be a miracle because I definitely haven't done this before. So magically I'm going to get some pattern here. Here it starts. And I'm hoping the white will let the purples show up a bit. I just have to be where my pattern finishes, because I don't have a regular shape. Obviously I've got a jacket shape. So I'll have to go down where I think this place would have ended. Then I'm going to go through those pairs and do the same thing again with the next row down. I'm pleased I've put a long thread in my needle. And that one goes off to there. And then I come back just the same as before. This is my starting one. See how a pattern is starting to build up. I'm just using the eye of the needle at the moment, and I'm going to do all of this, the whole thing, and then when I have to do this up and down ones, I'll come back. So I've got all of the vertical stitches done, and I've turned everything 90 degrees, and it was so lovely seeing that pattern emerge. But now I have to do exactly the same steps on what's actually the horizontal stitches, but I've turned it round so that otherwise I was going to get confused. So I'm going to start here, and hopefully this is going to make a really beautiful pattern. I can't wait for it to actually appear. So I haven't got to get confused by it. So through here. And then up to the sort of the outer stitches of the two that are together, so they're crossing. And I'll know whether my grid was, I feel as if my grid wasn't accurate enough, but as long as the stitches end up crossing, I think it's going to look fine. Considering it's the first time I've done it, I'll just be over the moon if it looks sort of halfway decent, really. So this pair of rows should start to get the pattern together. All my crosses are happening at the same place, so that's good. At the bottom I am going over the patch of fabric, so I'm just choosing where I stop to make sure that it looks right. So on these ones I just sort of try to follow the pattern on, so I'm actually going to stop there, go through the back, and then through that one, which would have been one of the pair. Makes your brain work. And then here we go with the first completed part of the pattern. So through these, and through the ones that are left over. Oh, it's looking pretty. Yeah, I hope I've done it right. I think I have. I think I'm getting it right. If I haven't, well, none of this is through the cloth, so it should be easy to take out if I've done it wrong. It feels like it's going right. You can see a geometric pattern emerging, and my crosses are all ending up here, which is good. I thought I hadn't done my grid out properly, but I did the best I could, so I just tried my best. I'll go take it down here. This is under the collar, so it doesn't matter that the pattern will be a bit weird maybe. And then match up with those two. And match up with these two. Right down to the bottom again. That's it, I'm matching up now. Oh, the pattern's coming, look at that. That's beautiful. It's very exciting to see it coming, just appearing as I'm weaving through these stitches. And you think I did all three of these patterns are actually made from the same grid. It's phenomenal. I feel, why haven't I done this before? It's sort of like you either see a square grid with a cross or little 4-petaled flowers. I can see the little flower here. So like little hydrangeas. I'm going to continue and I'm going to lay all of this white in, and then I'll come back with the finish, and that's all I can manage to get to today, because for one thing I am going to need to order more thread because I have used so much more than I thought I would. Actually, I think the point was I didn't actually have a clue. And I'm doing quite big patches because I just thought it looked nice. It's worth doing a great big thing to show the patterns off. Well, that one's finished and I think it looks amazing. I really thought that my grid hadn't been accurate enough and it probably wasn't going to look properly, or there would look like there was mistakes, but actually I think it looks fine. And because I'm not a professional at doing it, I probably can't see the mistakes that are definitely there, because I can see, you know, there's bits that I can pick at, but I'm not going to. It's the first time I've done it. You have to give yourself grace when you're starting to practice something you haven't done before. You can't be just picking at all the bits you've done wrong. You look at it as a whole. I'm really pleased. I've now got 3 absolutely beautiful hitomezashi designs, and they've all come from the same 1/2 centimetre grid, and I just need to get better at putting the grid in. And if I can, see, that's all, I can see it there. I'm not going to stress about it. So every single pattern was an absolute joy to make. I really enjoyed this crisscrossy pattern. That's lovely, and it just feels really nice. This, it's hard to believe it was the same grid that made such a different pattern. And then this with the weaving of this, the cream thread through the pearl cotton. Actually, the pearl cotton has ended up being a little more subtle than I thought it would be. I thought it might have shown up a bit more, but I think I'm pleased. I don't want anything glaring and I don't want anything to be too strident. So that's where I'm leaving that today. So I really hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to turn around so you can see what the embroidery looks like. I'm really pleased with how it's come out, and I hope that this video has inspired you to take something old or something you might have thrifted and actually, you know, transform it with a bit of embroidery and a bit of creativity to make something really individual for yourself. Just going to sit down. Using embroidery in this way, it's a great way to express your own individuality and make something that's personal to you. And so I really hope you've enjoyed that, and if you have, press me the like button and subscribe to the channel. There's always something different going on with embroidery and hand stitching, whatever you want to call it. It's all handwork in the old-fashioned sense, and it's brought up to date by, you know, what's the new expression? Thrift flipping. I don't even quite know how to say it properly. But anyway, it's an old jacket that was really plain, and I felt it was a good base for some practice of those hitomezashi patterns. And I absolutely am loving them. They're so addictive to do. I just need to get better at drawing the grid. So anybody's got any comments, leave them for me. Anybody's got any suggestions, absolutely leave them in the comments. Let me know if you've done anything similar yourself, if you've recrafted something, or if you go looking for items in the charity shops or the op shops with a specific idea of using them to embroider or cut up and make something else with. So So in the meantime, I'm just going to say thank you so much for watching. I'm going to say, look, I've got bunny frilly cuffs now. Just press me the like button, subscribe if you've liked it, and I'll see you next time you visit me in Marion's world. And oh, I do know what next week's going to be. I think it's going to be crochet. I think it is going to be crochet. So you'll have to tune in and see what happens. Bye everyone. Thanks a lot for watching.